Have you attended a conference specifically for language teachers, either locally, regionally, or nationally? If you have, this episode will get you excited about the upcoming conference season. If you've never attended, you'll be inspired to attend for sure. Danja Mahoney and Vilma Nasuti Bibeau, both members of their state language conference planning committee, join me to explore everything that these events have to offer and all that's in it for language teachers. Personally, I live for PD, workshops, and a good old conference. I'm so excited. So let's jump in. Are you a language teacher looking for some reassurance that what you're doing in the classroom is on the right track? Or maybe you're looking for some ways to teach even more effectively. If you're one or the other or somewhere in between, you've landed in the right place. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with your host, me, Joshua Cabral. You're about to get tips, tools, and resources so that your students continue to rise in proficiency and communicate with confidence. Let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. And buongiorno, because we have an Italian teacher with us here today. So I am Joshua, and this is the World Language Classroom Podcast. And today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about conferences for teachers. And if you know me or you've listened to this podcast, you know I'm a huge fan of language associations. I give shout outs to them all the time. And I love conferences and workshops and PD and all of that stuff. So my hope today in talking about language conferences is to get you inspired, because we're going to soon be in language teacher conference season, which tends to happen in the fall going into the winter. So if you're planning on going to either a regional, national, or your state conference, I hope that this is inspiring you and getting you ready. And if you haven't been and you've only heard about them, I hope that by the end of this conversation, you're going to hear today that you are going to be Googling and finding out where that is and registering right away so that you can be there. So because I am in the state of Massachusetts and I'm a huge fan of my own state language association, which is MAFLA, I have invited on two people who are involved in the MAFLA organization and the yearly conference that happens. So I have the clerk, who is Danja Mahoney, and this is her second time on the podcast. She was on last year talking about teaching students with learning disabilities and neurodivergence, and I have had a huge response to that episode. I hear all the time from teachers that not only was it useful for teaching those neurodivergent students, but it was just so many good ideas about good language teaching. And so they were taking notes on that. And Danja was telling me that she's had people reach out to her from other states and asking questions and everything. So happy to have her back. Welcome back, Danja. And then I also have the conference chair this year, who's also the president-elect of MAFLA, and that is Vilma, who is with us today. So we have Danja and Vilma, who are both teachers also in Massachusetts. So Danja is in Reading, Massachusetts, and she teaches Spanish and Latin. And Vilma teaches Italian and Spanish, and she's the coordinator of world languages in Medford, Massachusetts. And all of the work that happens in state language associations is volunteer. So these are all working teachers that are in the trenches in the classroom and also providing all these wonderful opportunities for teachers as well. So Vilma and Danja, I hope I did you justice, and welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast.
Thank you, Joshua.
Yes. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you for having us.
So let's jump right into talking about language conferences. And we're going to use the MAFLA conference as an idea of what happens at these language conferences. But regardless of what state you're in, your state or your national conference, if you're in a different country, they're likely doing very similar things. Regional conferences, national conferences. But let's start with you, Danja. And can you tell us about the benefits of attending a conference for world language teachers?
Well, so often with world language teaching, you are one of only a few people with your skill set or your language expertise. As a Latin teacher, originally I was often the only Latin teacher in the building. And so attending conferences, regardless of your language background, means that you can build connections and relationships with other teachers in your field. So it's a great way to build community. It's a great way to start to collaborate on new ideas, to understand what's happening. And often when you're in a small department, you tend to lose track of what's happening in world language pedagogy specifically. So this is a great way to connect and find out what's happening in the field, get to know other people, build connections, and build a community with fellow language teachers from across the state and across the world.
Mm-hmm. So we'll look into, as we go through the different parts of a conference, what networking and all that looks like. And I think that's a little bit of a misnomer if you haven't been to a conference, that you just go and sit in a bunch of workshops and you listen to sessions and there's not sort of interaction. And so that's one of the things I want to make sure that people understand. But we'll get to what all that looks like. But it was interesting when I just said, what are the benefits, that you didn't say, just go sit in a chair, listen to a person talk, and then go to another room where another person, you're going to sit there and they're going to talk. It's so much more than that, right?
And so often right now, when you go to a workshop, it's not meant to be sitting still. Just like we don't want our students sitting still for an hour at a time. So often there's engagement, there's music, there's interactive activities, there's all of the best practice of pedagogy is happening in the sessions. And you're not only are you hearing about it, but often you're experiencing what's the best practice. So it's amazing to see what you can do and what's happening in our field.
So Vilma, if I move on to you for this question, and so we sort of heard about the benefits from Danja, but can you talk us through what typically happens at a language teachers conference in a little more detail?
Of course. The schedule and setting vary depending on the organization. The MAFLA conference consists of 3 days. There is a pre-conference, which this year will be on Thursday, October 26th. Then the body of the conference on Friday, October 27th. And finally, additional morning workshops and sessions on the last day, Saturday, October 28th. Educators, actually anyone in the educational system, such as superintendents or principal, can choose to attend the conference. You can attend either Thursday only, or Friday and Saturday, or Saturday only, or the entire conference, which of course we highly recommend. Usually attendees have already registered for the conference prior to the conference and selected, in addition to the regular conference, all the workshops they want to attend, their meals, and their business and awards luncheon on the last day of the conference. Or they can register at the conference on the day of. We also provide an app so attendees can see the entire program of the conference. Also, usually attendees will have already decided which workshops or sessions to attend. For example, let's quickly look at the Friday conference, the MAFLA conference. Attendees will attend their selected workshops or sessions in the morning. Then they have a break for lunch. The keynote speaker's address is scheduled between the morning sessions and the afternoon sessions. Then the afternoon workshops and sessions begin, which will last until 5 p.m. And within the schedule, it is built enough time to visit the exhibit hall and to take a coffee break.
So the exhibits hall, which is a huge part of the conference, and I have to highlight this real quickly because I was on the board of directors of MAFLA for 7 years myself, and my job as one of the coordinators was the exhibits and sponsorship for the conference and the organization. And so the exhibits hall and all of the vendors and exhibitors have always had a very special place in my heart and the relationships with them. And that's really important because, as Danja was saying at the beginning, it's an opportunity being at a conference to see things that are on the forefront. So it's not just what's happening in sessions and workshops, but also what the various vendors are bringing and what's being published out there and what are the materials being used in a classroom as well. So it's a good chance to see that. Could I ask you, Vilma, just to clarify one thing you said in there, because this is a question I used to get all the time on the conference team. What is the difference between a session and a workshop?
Absolutely. The workshop is a longer session. We offer a variety of workshops. On the pre-conference in the morning, we offer a 6-hour workshop. 4 6 hours workshop. In the afternoon, we offer 4 6-hour workshops. This is to help people bundle their PDPs, their time. These workshops are an additional to the cost of the conference. They provide you with more PDPs and an opportunity, like Danja was saying early, an even deeper opportunity to interact and collaborate within that time.
I wanted to follow up because for people outside of Massachusetts, PDPs or professional development points are required for us to relicense as professional educators. And many times, and I'm going to assume other states follow the same pattern, you have to have at least 10 hours of similar or related content. So the convenient thing about a conference is that you can choose your sessions and your workshops so that you're focusing on an area of interest, so you can bundle those hours of professional development in a way that your state accepts them. So the professional development points are super important as professionals just to take care of our paperwork, but it also allows you to really dig deeper into an area of interest. And I think Vilma will probably talk about this a little bit more, but we have strands that are language specific or area of interest specific. So for example, elementary education, like elementary world language teaching for pre-K to grade 6 or 8. And that's definitely a different area of focus than, a 9th through 12th grade language program or an AP French or even collegiate programs. They're different. So we have different strands that allow you to bundle that. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to follow up with one other thing about the exhibit hall. I love the exhibit hall, like the sessions, the workshops, it's all wonderful. I love choosing a workshop because I know I'm going to get in deep, and I love attending the sessions. The sessions are open to anybody, and those are a little bit shorter, usually about an hour, 45 minutes. And again, each conference is going to be a little bit different. So sessions will be about an hour, and you're going to be with other people who are interested in that field. But one of the best things is taking some time to walk through the exhibit hall, see all of the vendors, pick up some swag, maybe a couple squishy balls or lots of pens, get a bag, get some snacks, have a cup of coffee and talk to people who are passionate about the field. They're vendors, but they also help to contribute to the growth of our field. So you might find booksellers, people who write their own novels, people who work for large publishing houses, travel sites, people who are interested in helping you set up pen pals or international exchange or using technology to further your language programming. And all of that comes up in the conference hall and the exhibit hall where you get to talk to people. So building that into your schedule is a super important way to get to know what's happening in the field.
Yes. And I have seen in all of the conferences I've attended that is specifically put in the schedule. So you're not choosing to do that instead of going to a session, that there are specified times in the schedule to actually do that. So we started to talk a little bit there about what happens beyond workshops and sessions. But Vilma, can you talk to us a little bit more about other things that are happening in events and activities, networking opportunities, anything like that?
Absolutely. In addition to workshops and sessions, we also have roundtables scheduled on Friday. And then again, the exhibit hall presents, as Danja just mentioned, an amazing opportunity to see what are the latest teaching tools and resources for the profession, which also presents an opportunity to build new relationships and reconnect with others. The Friday buffet lunch, the keynote speaker, the Saturday immersion breakfast, and the Saturday luncheon all present an opportunity to collaborate, meet, and reconnect. But this year, we are particularly excited about the addition of Joshua Cabral's podcast station. Yes,
Who,
you
me?
heard me correctly. Yes, Joshua will be there.
Yeah, so we'll have an opportunity to do a live podcast episode while we're there with attendees, and that is so exciting. to connect with people in person. I have this habit whenever I'm around at conferences and people say, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." You have to take a selfie with me, just so you know. So if you happen to come up to me and you say, "I listened to the podcast,"
Absolutely.
we're taking a selfie and it's going on social media, because we have to find some way to connect beyond audio sometimes. But I'm very much looking forward to that. Any other events in there you want to mention, Danja?
Well, the luncheons are a great opportunity to get together with colleagues, and also on Saturday, the organizations, the professional organizations for within the state that are kind of under the umbrella of, not under our umbrella, but under world language umbrella. So the AATs, right? The American Association of the Teaching of Spanish and Portuguese or French or Italian, the Classical Association of Massachusetts, that's when there's business and chapter meetings on Saturday. And that's a great opportunity to come together towards the end of the conference and meet with the people that you work with most closely throughout the year. At the luncheon for MAFLA, we announce Teachers of the Year and honor people, recognize people who've made contributions. Vilma mentioned that there's immersion breakfast, and that's a great way for anybody who wants to spend some time communicating in their target language, especially if you don't have opportunities to speak in that language very often. It's a great way to connect.
The business luncheon, which can sound like, oh, it's a business luncheon, but I've always found that in going to several of these at different state associations, that there's such pride in we say awarding and giving awards and things like that, but it's just recognizing sort of teacher superstars, and just doing great things and what they've contributed. And you had mentioned that the Teacher of the Year is announced at that event as well. And just point out, only because I'm proud of the state that I live in and my state language organization, that we've had Rebecca Bluewolf, who is a teacher here in Massachusetts. She was a Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. Then she went on to NECTFL, and then she went on to ACTFL, and she was the ACTFL Teacher of the Year. Same thing happened with Ted Zarrow, who is a Latin teacher, right? So when you see these ACTFL Teachers of the Year and everything, like they're not starting there. They're starting in their state. It is the State Language Association who is first connecting them and celebrating them and moving them on. And it all happens at things like the business luncheon, So I like people to understand, because they see the things on the national level, but it really starts at a very grassroots place at the state level for so many different people. So, Danja, if I continue with you a little bit, and if we talk about collaboration and how being at a conference helps to foster collaboration, and are there specific opportunities for that?
The great thing about conferences and building up these opportunities for connection is that you never really know. It's very organic. So often you will find that you're in a session and you'll find somebody that you're talking to, especially if there's a breakout and you have a chance to talk. You get to know the different people and you get to see people that you've met before. So if this is your first conference, you'll make friends, I guarantee it. But then if this is your second, third, or 10th conference, you'll always have an opportunity to reconnect with those same people. So that's super important, especially in languages that are less commonly taught, is to build those connections and collaboration. Leading up to the conference, we're going to have what's called MAFLA Meets, and other organizations, I'm sure, do similar things. But we're going to have a couple of Zoom hours before the MAFLA conference. So anybody who's new to MAFLA Meets can set up their conference app and start to ask questions, start to plan ahead. As Vilma said, it's nice to plan ahead. And then there will be first-time attendees table at the conference. And many conferences do this, where there's an opportunity to meet with other people who are there for the very first time to help get the lay of the land, figure out where things are, and to start to plan how you're going to spend time. It's amazing how many events there are with coffee breaks and lunches, social events that are already built into the schedule, and lots of time afterwards where you can spend time. If you're staying at the conference, the afternoon and evening time, staying at a hotel with your colleagues, that is priceless.
And so, Vilma, can you tell us a little bit about who presents at the conferences, how you go about even finding those people? Talk to us about that a little bit.
We have a variety of presenters from elementary to higher ed with diverse backgrounds and expertise. Technically, anyone can submit a proposal to present at a conference. The presenters' workshops, which are longer than regular 60-minute sessions, as we mentioned before, are typically selected among those educators who have ample experience both in teaching world languages and are well known in the profession. The presenter select their topic based on the conference topic. This year's MAFLA's fall conference topic is building global perspectives through the power of language, or any topic they feel is important to address.
I always appreciate when we get the workshops, the in-depth with the people that are known in the field. And then with the sessions, which are, I always find that it's teachers that are proud of what they're doing in the classroom and they've figured some stuff out. And I always encourage people, teachers, to try it out. Try, like, maybe you want to do a session with a colleague the first time or with a group of people, and I remember, this is going back maybe 10 years, but at the MAFLA conference, I did a session called You Too Can Present a Session. And it was people that came, and we basically talked about how you find your idea, what you could possibly do, and to encourage people to do it because teachers are doing such great stuff out there.
So, Joshua, to echo what Vilma was saying, anyone can apply to present. And just like you said, just planning and preparing. Usually the presenters need to submit their proposal 6 or 8 months before the conference. So that's something to keep in mind, that you need to plan ahead. But you're going to see people presenting what they're proud of, what they're collaborating on, what they're doing in their own districts. And sometimes it's a collaboration between people from other districts or between classrooms. And sometimes it's a model of what they're actually doing in the classroom. So there's so many diverse things going on. You do not need to be a doctor to do this. You do not have your EDD. You do not need to be super experienced. You could be in your first few years. And some of the best conference sessions that I've seen have been young teachers sharing what's happening in their classroom and talking through the great ideas that they're bringing to their classes. So it could be anybody, and I'd encourage anyone to try.
And that's exactly what I did in the past. For someone that's a little bit more shy like myself, I always presented 60 minutes sessions, and I stayed within the Italian group, the Italian peeps. So I presented on vocabulary, what worked best in my classroom, and wasn't necessarily a topic based on Italian language and culture, but a topic that was important to me.
Excellent.
And eventually you'll get a little bit more confident, and you may want to present at a higher level. For example, Danja and I will present a roundtable at ACTFL this year together on students' motivation to second language proficiency. So anybody can present. I support that.
Yeah, it's a good stepping stone. You start with your local, your state, and you kind of build your experience and go from there. Just like I was saying with the Teachers of the Year, you start in our grassroots and what's happening. I enjoy ACTFL. I enjoy the regionals, but there's something about the state language organizations. They're smaller, they're more intimate. And it's people that teach your demographic of students. They are teaching your state standards, which when you get to ACTFL, different states have different standards. So you have all that going on. So I can continue to champion the state language organizations all day. So I'd just like to move on here to some sort of recommendations and connections. So if there were maybe other board members that would like to connect with the MAFLA board to find out about how you're doing your conference, or if there are members that would like to find out more, how can we be finding MAFLA and finding out more about the organization?
You can follow us on Twitter, #MAFLA23, or you can follow me at the Bibeau1 on Twitter. You can check the MAFLA website.
So I'd suggest making sure that you join as many of the Facebook groups as possible for your language and for your state. Follow us on LinkedIn. The state or the professional organizations have LinkedIn accounts. Then for specific conferences, using that app and connecting with people through the conference app is super important. And it's a really powerful way to stay connected. You can take notes on the app. You can set up your schedule. You can plan ahead for where you want to go next. So using the resources that are already there is a really great way to connect with people. One really great way to build connection is to think outside the language that you're currently teaching. Some of the most interesting pedagogy that I've learned about has been through attending, for example, an Italian workshop, where I really learned a lot more about second language teaching, even though I'm not an Italian teacher. And sometimes when we focus only on our own language or our own content area, sometimes we miss out on some of the most interesting and impactful workshops and sessions. So I'd encourage you to just look for what interests you and not just focus on what your immediate colleagues or your immediate language specific friends are doing.
So before we say our goodbyes, I always like to leave listeners with some hearty, meaty piece of advice. So Danja, why don't you start with this? Any advice about language conferences for our listeners?
So my advice for anyone attending a conference for the first time or for the 20th is to build those connections and really meet people with interests that are similar to yours. Get out there and be open to all of the opportunities and think about how you can improve your pedagogy in one small way every year. So this year, choose one area of focus, go in, find that area of interest and explore it, and try it out in your classroom. Bring it back to your classroom.
Absolutely. Have fun. It is incredibly fun and exciting to attend a conference. Perhaps nothing more rewarding than interacting, networking, and collaborating with fellow educators. There is so much to learn and so much to enjoy in a conference. I have participated in language conference for many years at a state, regional, and national level. And I always attended with a friend colleague, not from the same school, of course. We made an opportunity to reconnect, engage, and share with each other and others. And we engaged learning experiences, ideas, and tips to bring back to a classroom right away the following week. And we had a lot of fun doing so.
Yeah, thank you for ending on that idea of fun, because language conferences are a lot of fun. And I mean, I often say, I don't know what happens at English teacher conferences or what's happening with math teachers or science teachers. I'm sure they have their own fun, but language teachers, first off, they're incredibly generous. So you go to these conferences and there's just such generosity, and then just a lot of fun. So I will encourage everyone to Google your state organization or your regional or even ACTFL if you are not already involved. Get involved with the conference, but in the organization in general, because there's a lot that happens outside of just the yearly big events like a conference. But thank you so much, Vilma and Danja, for joining me on the podcast today and just inspiring everyone to get involved in this conference season. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Joshua.
Thank you. I really appreciate being able to encourage people to explore their conference and to explore their language community.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Danja and Vilma? I hope that you're excited to attend a conference during this school year. Be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Danja, Vilma, and their association, MAFLA. You'll also see the link to sign up for Talking Points, my weekly email newsletter with tips and resources for language teaching. There are also links to get in touch with me if you'd like to work together, either in person in your school or remotely. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the World Language Classroom podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Connect with me on X, aka Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WL Classroom. And for even more valuable resources, visit my website, WLClassroom.com, where you'll find over 300 blog posts about language teaching. So stay inspired, keep growing, and continue making a difference in your language classroom.